There exists a character in fiction unlike anyone else. A character who is meticulous with their planning. One that foresees every possible future and manipulates it into his favor. A character who uses everyone around them to do their bidding. Someone who will do anything and everything to get their way through total control. Now, I know you probably think I'm talking about Aizen. I don't blame you. Just like the character I will be talking about today, I led you astray. No, who I'm talking about far exceeds Aizen, being so much smarter and more dominant that one could say Aizen was inspired by him. Of course, I'm talking about the landlord from Smiling Friends. I know this might seem like an out there claim, even for me. I thought the same thing. That was until I connected all the dots. I believe the best way I can convince you is to lead you down the same rabbit hole I found myself digging into. May 2024. I had recently uploaded a video talking about Aizen from the popular manga Bleach. His entire character was fresh in my mind as I watched the latest episode of Smiling Friends. An Allen adventure, a critically acclaimed think piece about an interesting critter, Allen. It explores his unhinged venture tracking down a box of paperclips his boss asked him to get. No, I won't go into a full breakdown. From here on out, I'm working under the assumption that everyone has watched this series. Take this as your first and last spoiler warning. We learned by the end of this episode that all the crazy adventures and events that took place within the episode were carefully orchestrated by Allen's landlord. 8 months and $750,000 to carefully piece together this plan to get Allen to hang out with him, smoke weed, and fill their bellies with diet soda while playing Burnout Revenge for the PS2. Immediately, I questioned his true intentions. I mean, he did achieve what he sought after in the end, but gave up so easily at the slightest inconvenience? Even though he himself set up the resolution to the problem he made? No, this couldn't be how it ended. However, I just couldn't connect any more dots. The landlord only appeared in one episode, and I thought the trail died here. That was until I checked the Smiling Friends wiki and unraveled everything. First, I read through the episode's page. Nothing really stood out for now, so I moved on to the next obvious page, Mr. Landlords. Scrolling down to the trivia section, we find our first linchpin. The landlord was originally set to appear as Pim's landlord in episode 3. He sports the same design down to the red and green eyes. Bloodshot from excessive amounts of weed. Learning this, I scrambled to find images of the room for a comparison. Lo and behold, they are nearly identical. Both are extremely well put together and managed rooms, with a bed pushed against the wall and a window viewing the cityscape immediately to its side. With all this evidence, I think it's clear they live in the same complex, or at least complexes managed by the same landlord. Especially when you look at Charlie's room. It's the only complex we actually see the exterior of, making me think this was an intentional clue given for the viewers. Charlie's actual apartment is dilapidated and unfurnished. The view is blocked by a wall of mountains, clearly placing it outside of the city as opposed to the inner city Pim and Allen live in. This cannot be a coincidence. The same landlord managing and spying on 2 of the Smiling Friends? Even bragging about having the key to one of their domiciles and orchestrating a wild goose chase for the other one? I don't think. No. I know the landlord's motivation don't only involve Allen. It involves all the Smiling Friends. Clearly his plan far exceeds this one episode. But how? He died at the end of the episode due to self-inflicted wounds. What other plans could he have? In the post-credit scene of An Allen Adventure, we see the landlord awaken in the morgue, discolored and zombie-like, coming back to fulfill a different mission. Or maybe this was all part of the plan. Perhaps his motivation for the whole goose chase was to make Allen, and by proxy everyone around him, believe he is dead, making it easier for him to pull the strings from the darkness. Sadly, here I hit another dead end. I couldn't figure out the landlord's motivation, nor how he revived after clearly stabbing himself in the stomach and being pronounced dead. No amount of wiki searching or rewatching was saving me. I thought it ended here, with me being outsmarted by the landlord and his plans. Then I took a step back. I remember a certain someone who also faked their death to work better in the shadows. The same character I opened with, Sosuke Aizen. He sent his plan into motion the same way, with his false death. But what else? What else could he teach us about the landlord's plan? That's the moment it hit me. Aizen is a smart character, maybe even as smart as the landlord. But he knew he couldn't unfold his plans alone. He had allies on the inside, able to gather information and pull the strings alongside him. That's it, the landlord must have an ally. Maybe they'll give us the landlord's motivations and the detail of his revival. I promptly searched around the Allen episode. I searched for a character who was close to Allen and Pim, someone who could be trusted and constantly had an eye on the crew. A character who had the means of bringing the dead back to life. Someone who was integral to the landlord's plan to isolate Alan and send him on this frivolous journey. Tell me, does this not sound obvious? Mr. Boss, the founder and head of Smiling Friends, is directly working with the landlord. He is the one who sent Alan on this journey. He manages all the Smiling Friends while the landlord get to monitor their lives outside of work. They both work towards a larger goal, one we can't comprehend yet. This revolution blew the case wide open. If the previous information about the landlord renting to both Alan and Pym was a crack in the dam, this new knowledge is a meteor striking it directly. Now we can say for certain the landlord's plan involves all the Smiling Friends, even indirectly giving Charlie a miniature version of himself as a security drone, using it to spy on the only member who isn't the landlord's tenant, meaning Mr. Boss knew Alan would hand it off to Charlie, the knick-knack collector. So what is their motivation? How did Mr. Boss revive the landlord? I kept digging, knowing the information would flood in, and just like that, the very next episode gives us some answers. The Boss Finds Love, a Halloween special oddly airing in May. This episode involves our newly revealed villain, Mr. Boss, falling for the siren song of Satan's daughter, Brittany. She seeks to kill him and hand all his belongings over to Satan, including Smiling Friends, leading to the very Smiling Friends gathering to kill her and save the company, allowing Mr. Boss to own 1/4 of hell. Interesting. What if I told you they planned this for years in advance, all to gain access to hell and subsequently immortality? Follow me for a second. The Smiling Friends learn of Brittany's plan from a publicly accessed book documenting the phenomenon of her seeking the richest and most powerful man every 100 years. This at least tells us that it's easy information to access and gives us a motivation for the dastardly duo. Mr. Boss created Smiling Friends to gather immense wealth and to foster a crew so dependent that they'd free him from Brittany's curse, allowing him to take 1/4 of hell per agreement, gaining immortality. But it wasn't that easy. No, this is a plan they worked on for years, befriending and later stabbing competition in the back. In the episode Frowning Friends, when met with this very competition, we see this side of Mr. Boss that forces itself out to get rid of them. You see, from doing this for so many years, Mr. Boss fractured. There's Mr. Boss, the fun-loving businessman who just wants to see people smile. And then there's the demonic manifestation that kills everyone in their way, the Goblin, as I've coined it. In the same episode, before the Goblin takes over and attempts to kill the Frowning Friends, we see Mr. Boss's guilt personify itself as his previous victims. Mr. Peanut, the mascot of Planters Nuts in our world, but the actual owner in this one, Warren Buffett, crowned as the most successful investor of the 20th century, and last but least, former shit-stained President Ronald Reagan. This shows us that the landlord and Mr. Boss have planned this for a long time, one by one taking out all that could stand in their way as the richest man on the planet. Yes, this means in this world, the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan was successful. So what's their plan now? They have immortality. What's next? Well, I won't lie to you. I don't have a concrete idea, but I have a theory. In the episode, The Magical Red Jewel, aka Tyler Gets Fired, we see inside Mr. Boss's desk. It contains a series of concerning items such as a Chinese passport, handgun, and the most important item, a manifesto. The basic definition is as follows: a written statement declaring publicly the intentions, motives, or views of its issuer. And over the years, the term has earned a negative connotation after multiple people have written one before committing a terrible act. And after Charlie's reaction to reading it and his insistence to question Mr. Boss about it, I can only assume its contents are not very good. Now I propose to you, Mr. Boss in his fractured state seeks to end the world or inflict massive damage to it, him being a force of destruction that the landlord took a hold of, manipulating him into serving his desires for complete world domination, using Mr. Boss as a weapon as he carves out the perfect world. He even recruits more allies by using the promise of eternal life as one of his hell soldiers. We even see it happen in An Alan Adventure. The moment the shopkeeper who gave Alan the paperclips dies, he comes to Alan as a ghost to tell him the exact information he needs in the moment, then promptly gets sent off to hell. Remember, hell is their domain. It's particular that he died the moment his time was up. He was on his last legs, and the landlord used the promise of eternal life to get him to do his bidding. I know that was probably a lot of info to process, so to make everything a little more digestible, I'm going to organize everything into a timeline. Some of it will be subjective, but the core moments I talked about earlier are, of course, concrete. Our story starts in the 80s. Based on what Mr. Peanut and what Charlie said, we can gather that Charlie's grandma passed away from eating a peanut filled with toxic pesticides, leading to public outrage and Planters Nuts on the verge of collapse. That's when our main character appears, the landlord, who worked as a lawyer based on this concept art. He recommended the peanut jig and it was an arousing success, leading towards an acquaintanceship between the two. They, alongside a young Mr. Boss, find the book on Satan's daughter, calculating that her arrival is in the coming 40 years. That's when they devise a brilliant plan to all work together, accumulate wealth, and become the single richest person on the planet to lure her into a trap. However, the landlord knows how untrustworthy Mr. Peanut and any other allies they gained are. It's likely that they plan to steal the power of hell themselves. The landlord planned for this, however. He saw the vulnerability in Mr. Boss, how easy it would be to manipulate him and use him to do his dirty work. So, throughout their adventures to the top of the food chain, they make powerful friends, use them till their value runs out, and eliminate them before they can stand in the way. Years of this go by, victims including but not limited to Mr. Peanut, Warren Buffett, and former President Ronald Reagan. Then the next stage of their plan starts. The landlord finally lives up to his name, invests in property, getting a large steady flow of income, and Mr. Boss starts his dream company, Smiling Friends, cementing himself as the richest man on earth and specifically attracting 4 employees. This is where the series starts, but not where you think. You see, the first episode of Smiling Friends in the timeline isn't Desmond's big day out, it's the boss finds love. Isn't it weird how out of place this episode is? It's a Halloween special that aired in the first half of the year. Also notice how Charlie never mentions meeting Satan, even though it's something he would gloat about and has mentioned to the others. Now I think this was a sign to us. It followed right after the landlord revived in An Allied Adventure, clearly as a flashback to show us how he revived. In the episode, the boss finally achieves the goal they waited so long for, the power of hell. Both him and the landlord live more confidently, knowing they have passed the barrier of death. But a problem arises. A mix of mental health issues and the loss of his daughter causes Satan to give up, and hell freezes over, invalidating their new immortality. Both of them are terrified, but after some time they devise a plan. From here, the rest of the series happens in order, and we see their plan in action. They will use the job orders from Smiling Friends to anger and torture each member, leading one of them to snap and indirectly cause their own death, where they will then journey to help Satan smile and unfreeze hell. But we're not there yet. We see the start with Desmond's big day out, the linchpin of Pym's anger in the finale as Charlie doesn't help and Pym feels unmotivated for the first time. From here, the rest of the episodes occur, each having a unique torture for each member, having to deal with an awful public figure where they inadvertently lead to a death. Pym loses a woman he loved to a pathetic shrimp, then gets chased down by a forest demon, nearly killing him. Charlie had to witness and solve the death of his favorite fast food chain owner, then getting romantically involved with Mip, only for Mip to die, and Charlie learning he was used. Frowning Friends is self-explanatory, but we also get to see Mr. Boss's dark side and how he killed all his previous competition. Then we make it to the finale, where everything was leading to. We see all the members decorating before getting ready to leave for Christmas, only for the boss to conveniently step in and give them a long task. Here we see Charlie and Pym snap. They argue about all the previous events and it leads to Charlie's death. Just as planned, he goes and helps Satan in an unexpected and unique way, getting revived in the process. Note here that we see a different form of revival. It seems a heavenly revival allows you to keep your form while revival through hell zombifies you. The landlord finally achieved everything he wanted. He's an unkillable force who worked everything out. Now he and Mr. Boss get really confident. We see this embodied in the Brazil special. The one vacation the Smiling Friends get, conveniently they mistake who books the hotels, forcing them to cancel and return to the status quo. I think it's obvious that this mistake was planted by the landlord and Mr. Boss, all to make them feel reliant on the company, making it so they never leave. Later, the landlord even kills himself in front of Alan, making him, and by extension the whole company, believe he is dead for good, only to come back as the biggest fictional threat ever. There are genuinely so many more details about this theory, but I can't take any more of your time. I think I paved the truth of the series out perfectly for you. We will end on one thing. The landlord clearly wants something from each of the Smiling Friends in his quest for world domination. I'm certain I know why he picked each of them. Him for his infinite sweetness. He always sees the good in people and it freed him from many dire situations. Charlie for his connections, such as his legendary uncle, and his down-to-earth nature. I mean, we saw it for ourselves. He was the only one who could have made Satan smile, even if it was indirect. Alan for his brain. We learn in the Season 2 finale that Alan's a genius who possesses skills to map out and create boots capable of traveling to the moon. And finally, Glep for his raw bad boy edge. Each of them brings something extremely valuable to the table, only solidifying in my head that the landlord is unbeatable. Hey, I don't have a channel mascot, so enjoy watching my profile pic sit by the fire. I just wanted to thank everyone who's watching. I'm super glad that you sat through this entire thing, and even heard me out in the end. Down below I have a Patreon you could join for behind the scene views of upcoming videos and getting your name here at the end. Wink wink. Anyway, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.